Last, 9C, Old School Square Center for the Arts, Inc. update. Alexina presenting.
Good afternoon, Board. I'm Alexina Janite with the Delray Beach Community Redevelopment Agency, and I'll be providing an update on the Old School Square A-Guide Agreement. In July of 2020, Old School Square applied for A-Guide funding for fiscal year 2020-2021. $900,000 was requested under the Economic Development and Recreation and Cultural Facilities Need Area to support Old School Square's cultural arts programming. At the August 25th, 2020 CRA regular board meeting, Old School Square's funding request was presented for consideration.
Excuse me, Alexander. Do we have, okay. Oh. Okay, I'm sorry. Would you repeat the last sentence?
Sure. At the August 25th, 2020 CRA regular board meeting, Old School Square's funding request was presented for consideration. However, the board did not make a recommendation for funding. Subsequently, Old School Square modified their funding request for a reduced amount of $750,000, which was presented for consideration at the September 14th, 2020 CRA workshop meeting. At the September 29th, 2020 CRA board meeting, the CRA board approved the funding request, and on October 16th of 2020, the CRA and Old School Square executed their funding agreement for fiscal year 2020-2021 in an amount not to exceed $750,000. Fast forward to September 14th, 2021, at the City of Delray Beach Commission meeting, the city auditor, Ms. Davidian, presented the internal audit report, number 2102, Old School Square Lease Compliance Report. According to the CRA's A-Guide funding agreement, the CRA may request additional information that it deems necessary in order to fully evaluate Old School Square's performance and financial status. So, following the receipt of the city's report, in addition of the receipt of Old School Square's audited financial statements for fiscal years 2018-19 and 2019-2020, and because of the issues identified in the city's report, specifically the sections of the report that cite concerns with the use of the PPP funds and potential double dipping, the CRA requested additional information from Old School Square. The CRA deemed this information necessary to fully evaluate Old School Square's performance and financial status, which again is in line with the A-Guide funding agreement. To date, certain requests continue to be outstanding from Old School Square. And also consistent with the A-Guide funding agreement is the fact that any additional payments can be withheld until the CRA receives all the requested additional information that it has requested from Old School Square. This concludes my updates.
Thank you very much. All right. Do you have anything additional?
Yes, just a couple things. So just for clarification, the CRA's auditor did not resign. We are piggybacking on the city auditor's contract, and the firm was bought out in November. So prior to the buyout, we had asked our auditors to look at the Old School Square grant agreement and records due to the comments that we saw in the city auditor's report about the double dipping, just to make sure we're tracking where CRA funds were used. So, just to clarify that. So our auditors had already started looking at everything once the buyout happened. So we've been in the process of, having the new firm brought on, which was just approved today. So we provided the files to the auditors in October and November. On October 16th, our auditors sent us questions about the records they reviewed, and those questions were sent to Old School Square. We met with Old School Square staff and board on November 22nd, and during that meeting, based on the discussion, it seemed that there were some unresolved items that Old School Square had to address with their finances before they could adequately provide us information. There were discrepancies that in their accounting that needed clarification. So the outcome of that meeting is that they were going to go back, kind of look at everything, and respond to us. So on December 6th, we received another Excel spreadsheet and another narrative from Old School Square as a result of our meeting that we had in November, and we sent that to the auditors. But we were informed that we needed a contract before the auditors could look at everything to move forward. So we knew that that was coming on in January. Around mid-December, one of the board members started calling us for status, so we gave the information about the audit firm and what was happening. December 29th, one of the board members emailed us asking about meeting with our auditors. They wanted their finance individual and also their treasurer to have a meeting with our auditor on December 10th. I informed that I'd be out of town, that we should talk after when I return, and that also that we had the issue with the auditors. So last week, the board member called our staff, and that information was also provided. So we've been in constant communication. I think it's just not the outcome that's wanting of release of funds, but we just thought it'd be prudent to look into the matter since there was, some potential concerns about double dipping and use of funds. We just want to make sure that we can track where the money was spent and where it's going. And we thought it'd be prudent for us to have an outside firm look at it, especially since we're starting our audit. It's something the auditors could have picked up and looked at anyway. They do look at all of our contracts, so we just asked them to kind of take a look at this as a side matter. It just so happened the buyout happened in the middle, so now we have a new person that's going to be coming on. And we wanted to bring this today to the board just so everyone can hear it at the same time. There's been questions from, public, different people about what's happening. So this is just to kind of outline, where we are, give the board an opportunity to comment as well collectively. If there's anything you want us to push, ease back, this is just the time. We wanted an open forum to talk about it.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Commissioner
Okay.
Casale.
I just want to make sure that it's clear when we say double dipping, that what we're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that our taxpayers are giving the money to this organization, and they may have also been getting money for the same expense potentially from the PPP.
So I think on a, again, cursory, we're having the auditors look at it, but basically what we're seeing is that there were reports that we were given, it dated back to 2020 fiscal year, that were from the PPP loan. The forgiveness happened in 2021, but I believe there's, Old School Square may have gone back and kind of looked at the funds and said, oh, we got forgiveness for these, but we're trying to make sure that where the CRA money went to, because there were claims that CRA money paid for, some kind of salaries. Then after that, the forgiveness happened. So when the forgiveness happened, where did the CRA money get allocated to? So it's that trail that we're trying to just make sure that the trail makes sense.
Right.
Right.
And basically, they were made aware of this August 10th at a minimum, because that's when it was presented at the meeting that there was a question about double dipping. And the question arose from documents that they provided.
Correct.
Okay. So in November, you met and you said that you were in that meeting and you discovered that there was discrepancies in the accounting. So they needed to then go back and refine what they were giving you. But ultimately, they gave you an Excel spreadsheet that they produced. So no backup documentation to support the numbers that they're giving you, correct?
That's initially what we're looking at. So what came out of that meeting, there were Excel spreadsheets and an updated narrative that we provided to our auditor. So we're trying to see if that's sufficient to trace, but we haven't heard back. And we also
under the
asked
circumstances, that wouldn't be sufficient, I would guess, because that's just, I can create an Excel sheet. You can create an Excel sheet. Backup documentation at this point is probably what's required. And then so you gave them from November, right? This incident.
We met in November.
We all discussed in October, November, December. We're in January, and they still haven't provided any document that supports that they weren't double dipping, which is really concerning. Thank you. Double dipping, how would we characterize that if we are a federal organization? Is that putting false information on a form?
Well, I think what we're looking at specifically here is that the record, I think it's how much money was able to be claimed for PPP. I don't know if we're necessarily policing PPP here at this point. We're looking at the CRA funds because
Correct.
What happened is it seemed that when the PPP funds were forgiven, there was some going back to say, okay, well, we got forgiven here, so we won't need to use CRA money for this. So, and it may also be a narrative. I think that's why maybe Old School Square is looking to meet, because their explanation of how they're doing their accounting is different from what we're understanding. So that also is something that we noticed as coming out of that meeting, where our finance was saying, well, that's not how you do things. They're saying, well, this is how we do it. So we're trying to find that middle ground, and that's where we wanted to have the auditors
And
look at
because
it.
we brought up the audit report, what the auditor stated to us was that they used unrestricted money and moved it into an operational fund to use it to make their operational fund look different, which you can't take restricted funds and put them in your operational fund when they're restricted for something else. So my suggestion is that we should probably have substantial backup to determine, and I'm disappointed because I think if someone was stating that my organization was double dipping, I would be providing that documentation rather quickly. This is a very long time. And they got excused from the 309,000 PPP, but they asked for excusal on the 283 PPP?
I was informed that they were not, just on the first amount there was forgiveness. And we asked for the application and all the backup document. We only received the application, but not the backup documents. We were informed that there was personnel information on there, so we asked them just to redact it and provide that to us.
That was months ago, right?
That was last month, and that's when we started getting calls saying, well, we should meet with your auditor so we can explain, or you can tell, your auditor can tell us what we need to do. That was the conversation that happened last week and late December.
But if I may, it sounds like you're asking them for what you need and then they're not providing. It's been a month and they can't provide you the application that they submitted for PPP.
Yes, they want to explain, I guess. So, we want to hear, at least for me, I'd like to hear from our auditors first before going back and going back. And otherwise, we'd be meeting and going back and forth forever.
And may I just ask one more question? Because this is something you and I discussed, and I don't know if the whole group is privy to this, because I asked this specifically via email. When Old School Square stood in front of us, and they were considerably late on their audits, like in some instances, multiple years, correct? And they came here and said, we're late, it's the byproduct of COVID. We had problems with our auditors. And then you and I spoke, and that was, I think, August 10th. And you had spoken to the auditors. Holyfield Thompson said something contrary to what Old School Square stated to you. And Daskell Bolton said something contrary. Their named partners gave you different information. And this is the problem that I have, because if we can't rely on the people that we are giving funding to be honest with us and give us accurate information, months later, we're looking for documents to prove that they weren't using our taxpayer money and federal funding for the same expenses, that's a problem. What point, Renee, do we say you've excused yourself from any more money? At what point have we deemed them no longer able to get this money because they're not, I would say, cooperative?
Well, I'd like to hear back from the auditors just what they have on this last review, and if no other information is provided, I think we can just bring that back and say, this is the assessment, here's where we are. Would we like to release funds or come up with an amount in between, or where do we want to go as a board and move forward? But I think this is kind of the last look. We asked for the information. I can send another follow-up email after this meeting, and then once our auditors get back to us, they might ask for more information as well, but we can decide if we want to keep going or if we want to stop. But I would like that last review.
Thank you.
One question.
The chair recognizes.
Hi, Lori Ward, Finance and Operations Director. I also want to say that we're starting our slate clean with a whole new audit firm tomorrow, because we just approved the agreement. So there's going to be things going on with the CRA also, and those are the people that we want to review the additional information. So like it might not happen overnight.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Commissioner Gray?
Yeah, no, I just would like to know, is there someone for Old School Square? Because I just would like to know, thank you, Commissioner Casale, you asked all the, and answered most of the questions. But I just wanted to know, if we're asking for more information, why can't that just be supplied to us, like the current balance sheet, the QuickBooks results, and the forgiveness balance sheets? Are those something that we could literally just ask for, and if not given a time frame, even before trying to engage an auditor? That just seems to be reasonable to me. Like, if you need something to complete it, just like they needed all that information for the PPP, why can't we just ask for the information, and if we don't get it, then just go from there. I think we can make some decisions on that. Other question I have is that I'm really concerned about the fact that they asked us, our staff, to help them get their books in order. Is that something that we do for all these others, the Arts Garage, the Chamber, the Historic Society, EPOT, the Public Library? Or is that something that we sit down with nonprofits to say, hey, yes, we want it this way, give it to us this way, or to change their books to accommodate us?
We have worked with nonprofits in the past if they've had, some issues working through. In this case, I think it's more of, we're doing something this way, you're not understanding what we're doing, let me explain it to you, and then you tell me what you want type of a thing. But, I think we might be past that point, to keep going back and forth with these conversations, because we've asked for the information. It seems pretty clear what we've asked for to look at and why. I just don't know if that's not acceptable, I guess, to the organization.
So you're asking and you're not receiving.
Right. The response was, why don't we sit down with your auditor and talk to them? Let's talk. So that's why we want to
pass our staff and just go straight to audit. So is that normal? Is that something that we normally do?
Not with our auditors, no. We don't have our auditors meet with organizations, for clarification like that. We would normally just, if we ask the auditor to do something, we provide information. Sometimes we don't even meet with them. They ask us for stuff virtually, and we just send it to them, and they do the review and give us the report. Your audit's good or it's not. So we don't really, sit down and have these major conversations. They're looking at things as they are, and they give us their report and assess our performance. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the information, give it to the auditors, and they'll do their report. And then that's the end of it.
Are there anything else that you needed specifically for that, other than the things that I kind of just mentioned by just listening to what you all were asking for and knowing?
No, we sent an email. I think there was an email we had with a couple outstanding things. So they're aware. Like I said, I can send it again. But if it's not provided, then we'll just let the auditors know that we didn't receive it and to go ahead and let us know what they think of what they have.
And you make an amazing point, which is we are going above and
Commissioner Casale.
beyond. I'm sorry, thank you. She makes a very good point, which is we are going above and beyond what we typically do, the services provided for nonprofits, to try and figure out the situation. And it's not the norm, I would say.
Lori?
Yeah, and at some point, a decision's gonna have to be made, because we're doing our audit, and we're probably gonna have to do it fast since it's late. We usually start in November. And that money is still in a payable, so we're going to have to make some type of adjustment or not. So,
Correct.
There will be a deadline.
So they're holding us up as well.
I mean, we didn't start, but there would,
So at this point, can we as a board decide what our next step is, how long we're going to allow this to continue, and when we're going to say this is it, and make a decision and give a ruling, give a statement, and say it's over?
Well, like I said, now that we have the contract with the auditor, I can email everyone, let them know what their timeframe's looking like. We don't have the contract yet, so it's hard to really say definitive timeline. So if we can do that this week, and we'll talk to the auditors tomorrow, and we'll have more information.
Okay, then
And we can bring it back in
So
February.
can we give them permission to kind of like maybe just move forward instead of waiting a whole month to make a decision and bring it back to us?
You mean have Renee speak to each one of us individually, and
Well,
then?
The
Yes.
auditor's they know that they need to look at this as part of it. We can tell them it's pressing, we need to do it right away. So we can bring it item back in February. So they would have had a chance to look at it, or they wouldn't have, and then we can decide what we want to do there. But I think we need the time frame from them and when they can look at it.
Okay, if
Okay.
you need the time, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Commissioner Boylston?
When it's brought back at the next meeting, it'll be brought back as an item for a decision. Unlike today is an update discussion, but it'll be a formal item where we can make a decision, correct?
Well, if we have the review back, if we don't, then we could still make a decision. We just wouldn't have that information. We can frame it that way
Right.
to have a decision. It's either with that information or without.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea in the next agenda item, and
Right.
I really appreciate you and your team, the due diligence that you've taken on this and providing this update today,
Thank you.
and being a good steward of our CRA dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say also, this type of a situation isn't normal, so I know we spent extra time working on it, but having a report saying there's potential double dipping and different things like that, we have responsibilities too, just to look into it. So, it's not that we're trying to give anybody a difficult time. We're just trying to look into it. These aren't normal accusations or, things that come up in our day-to-day. So this is a little bit unusual situation.
It's extremely unusual.
And we want to, Mayor, do you want to say anything?
Go ahead.
No, I'll finish.
I was going to say thank you very much for keeping us up to date on this, and to the public who is unaware of what the pressure is from the standpoint of this board and the commission in doing the right thing. Please take note that this is not an easy situation for anybody up here. I mean, nobody. We're trying to do the right thing. This is not something that anybody is doing for any other reason than it's required of us to make sure that we are doing the right thing by the taxpayer dollars. The things that have been brought up, as you've heard, are not things that we can just turn our head and hold our nose and look in the other direction. These are things that we're responsible for taking action on and making sure that it's corrected. And I just want to make a notation because, we had a comment up here, and this is how the world out there gets caught up in half-truths. We didn't have an auditor that resigned. We had an audit company that was the city's audit company that was purchased by another company that no longer does business for governments. And so when that happens, it's not like our auditor walked out on us and quit and resigned, as somebody would like for the world to think. It was a situation that a company changed. And we have to then find another company, which we went to our second bid company, and we hired them, and the CRA is part of that, so they're going to be using the same company. And with that, we move on. But once again, it's very easy to take a situation and twist it so it looks bad on us and good on someone else. So be careful what you're hearing. A lot of times we're not able to come to our own defense because of the situation that we've been put in. So just understand that we're doing the best that we can and trying to make sure that things aren't going in the wrong direction when it comes to the taxpayer dollars. One more question, and I want you to keep this in mind. I don't know if it's something that once you find out from the auditor, which I think you're going the right direction, let the auditor guide us to where we need to go. But if there is discovery of double dipping, does that, and on the forgivable funds, does that mean that Old School Square owes the CRA the money that we've paid out for that double dipping figure? I'd like for that answer to come after you found and discovered in your discovery.
There is a provision in our contract for clawback, so that is something that we look at.
Very good, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Very good. We're spending a little bit more time than usual because of the nature of this particular subject. I want everyone to understand that this has not been an easy situation for the CRA because you may be caught up in something that you had no control over, and you're just trying to do your due diligence because, again, this is public taxpayer funds, and we as the keepers of it should do everything that we can to make sure that we're protecting it, because we don't want someone in the public to say you've misused public funds. That's the last thing I want to be involved with. So thank you. If there's nothing else,
Chair.
Do you have your...
I just want to piggyback on that. Not only that, but these are AGI funds. They're regulated by the state, right? Or
Just us.
Just us?
Just CRA, yeah.
But the CRA funds, like, the state is always after CRAs and how we spend our
Right.
money.
And nonprofits too. They're not really
And
fans of
nonprofits.
nonprofits.
So these AGI dollars, this is why we regulate them so closely, because we got to answer, upstream. We're always trying to protect our CRAs, so.
Thank you.
And
Thank
we
you.
actually, talking about the A-Guide, we were audited by the Auditor General. And because we had this program, we were fine. Because
And we
they
wanna
came in
continue that way.
asking why we were giving money to a nonprofit. So it is regulated in a way, because it could be looked at.
Yeah.
There was actually a movement a few years ago for CRAs not to fund nonprofits anymore and just brick and mortar, but no social services. But that didn't get written into the statute, but that was a possibility about 5 years ago.
I recall.
And it can come back,
Yeah, oh,
because
yeah.
if they see any untowards, I don't want to use the word business, no, the monkey. We don't want to be caught up in it. I don't want to be in the headlines for that. I would much rather have someone constantly standing in our face, asking us for funds
Yes.
that they feel they're due, when we have not resolved that yes, you are, or no, you're not. So we're going to take our time, and hopefully this will be resolved by February. We're not going to allow it to continue, as we have some of the documents that we were after. Had they been provided, perhaps we would not be in this position. So with that said, if there's nothing else on that subject, we'll move forward. Next we have